Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
I can't hear any of you yet.
We haven't started yet. One moment.
Council will go ahead and call the meeting to order. For the record, it is January 10th, 2023 at 4:33 PM. We'll begin this city council work session with roll call attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilwoman Strader,
Here.
Councilman Overton, Councilwoman Perot,
Here,
Councilman
I
Cavanagh,
can barely hear you guys.
Councilman Cavanagh,
Here.
Councilman Hoagland,
Here.
Mayor Simison.
Here. Next item is adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
I move adoption of the agenda as published.
Second the motion?
I have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda as published. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I,
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the agenda is adopted. First item up is a consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
I move approval of our consent agenda and for the mayor to sign and the clerk to attest.
Second the motion?
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the consent agenda is agreed to. There were no items moved from the consent agenda. And as we are still waiting for one person to show up for the proclamation, we are going to go ahead and move on to the first item under department reports, which will be the community development, WS West Ada School District Student Population and Community Programs Projects. Turn this over to Miranda or Marcy or someone else, whoever would like to. And Miranda, do you want to turn the podium around for her, please? You're great.
Should. First with your knees, now with your back.
Thanks for joining us, Marcy. Yep. Yeah, choose one.
How's this? Better? Is this better? It's okay? A little more? Is it good? Okay. Okay. I'm not, do I need to, Chris, do I need to push something here? Arrow, no, is a no? Okay, perfect. Thank you. I am Marcy Horner. I am the Planning and Development Administrator for West Ada School District. In my role, I get to analyze enrollment of the schools and their capacity. Today, I'm going to update you on enrollment for the schools in Meridian and also share with you some projected enrollment for upcoming school years. First, I just want to review some capacity terms. Building capacity is based on the number of general education classrooms a school has and is established at the time a school is designed. Program capacity is determined after a more detailed analysis of how those classrooms are being utilized. So if a classroom that is designed to be a general education classroom, but is being used by a special program such as maybe an EL classroom or a gifted and talented classroom, then that program capacity is adjusted. Here is a list of the traditional elementary schools in Meridian, their program capacities, and their enrollment for the current school year. The map on the right shows the location of those schools as well as their attendance areas, which are differentiated by the different colors. All of these schools are currently below their program capacity. Here is the list of the middle schools in Meridian, their building capacity, and their enrollment for this school year, as well as a map showing the locations of those schools as well. And here are those the high schools in Meridian. Going back to the elementary schools, I've added the projected enrollment for the 23-24 school year and highlighted those projected enrollment numbers that are approaching or exceeding the program capacity. And then here I've added the projections for the 24-25 school year and forecast trend. Here for the middle schools and the high schools, again, are the enrollments and the projected enrollment for the 23-24 school years. And once again, adding the 24-25 projected enrollments as well as a forecasting trend. And with that, I'll turn the time over to Mr. Gillen.
Thank you. So just for the record, Jonathan Gillen, I'm the Chief of Operations here at the school district. What I kind of wanted to walk you through a little bit is when a school is identified as, we'll use the term hotspot. So essentially it has either some enrollment projection concerns or we're getting close to that program capacity. I kind of wanted to just educate you a little bit on the process the district takes. And so once Marcy and I have visited, as we continue to look and evaluate enrollments, as we've identified a school that may need some additional checking on, we'll send a team, Marcy and myself, along with our Chief Academic Officer, Marcus Myers. And then if there's any program specific content person, so if it's affecting a GT program or special education, we'll identify those individuals and we'll actually go out and visit the school. So we'll walk the entire building. We'll make sure that our enrollment projections, our capacity usage is aligning with the maps that we have, essentially just verifying that what we say is program capacity actually is. And then we'll start taking a look at the building and saying, are there things that we can do differently? So education has changed with the change in COVID. And so now every student has a laptop. So I will often take a look and say, if you have a computer lab, maybe that's something that we could repurpose. And so we'll go through and evaluate that. We'll visit with the program directors, obviously visit with the principal and the administration in the building, and we'll start trying to identify how we can further maximize our building. And then if there are options identified, part of what I come is to be able to look at funding streams we have available to, if we need to make any building modifications, so that we can do that to make it as easy as possible. So a couple of the schools were identified already on your list. And so Chaparral, this PowerPoint's a couple days old. We've actually met, the enrollment team went out and reviewed Chaparral, and what we were able to do was identified, in that case, they are using a computer lab. And so we'll have that teacher travel to provide computers as part of the specials in the school. And essentially that computer lab will be repurposed. And so that's kind of the process we'll go through. That's usually the step one before we start identifying other facility options. In the case of Hillsdale, our belief is that we should move a portable out there. So we have a portable in another site we are going to move. And so currently we have an architect working through that process and the permitting process. So you shouldn't be surprised in the case of Hillsdale or Pleasant View if you actually see these things come up and you start hearing about them. Pleasant View is much the same. The site was already built with identification for a portable already on it. So we're just going to use that spot and we'll be moving a portable from another facility that's currently open. And then Mary McPherson is one that has been identified as a hotspot. Really for that one, we're kind of evaluating the enrollment. A lot of that has to do with the growth in the area and how many students move in. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that. Right now, they have the ability to handle the managed enrollment and the increases we project, and we'll just continue to keep an eye on it. So that's like a hotspot that really, quite honestly, is going to kind of stay in ember, and we're going to keep keeping our eye on it. And then I did just want to share a little bit about the other things the district is doing. So a lot of that discussion was really short-term solutions, right? We've identified a need, we've identified an enrollment increase. Here's how we're going to either move a portable or shift a change in the classroom to be able to meet those needs. District is also undertaking a pretty large capital planning process and identifying and looking at all of our buildings really for those deferred maintenance needs, which also obviously affect our enrollment management. So we have been evaluating each of our buildings, identifying needs across those buildings, whether it be hardscapes, parking lots, playgrounds, those kind of things. You may have started to hear some of this discussion. And so I just wanted you to know that's really kind of our medium-term planning in addition to continuing to evaluate enrollment and see if there's additional facility needs that we have. And with that, we can stand for any questions you have.
Thank you, Jonathan, Marcy. Council, any questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Hoagland.
Yeah, Jonathan, I don't know if there's a question to you or Marcy, but I want to make sure I understand. There's a funnel that goes to the high schools or comes down and you start with lots of elementary schools, come to middle schools, and then you go to the high school. But there's not necessarily the correlation if people look and see, oh, the elementary school is below capacity. Oh, the middle school is below capacity. That doesn't necessarily mean the high school that they flow to will be below capacity. Is that right? Or because there's other factors that come into play for some of the other high schools that are outside of our city boundaries and some things like that. So I just want to make sure I understand that there is, if there's capacity at other schools, does that mean or does it not mean there's capacity, will be capacity at the high school that they go to?
It doesn't necessarily correlate because each school is going to be analyzed separately and individually. We have feeder patterns, but really, we really just have to analyze those schools separately and individually, if I understand your question correctly.
I think Dr. Bub does.
Councilman, I think I hear where you're going. You're right, it is a funnel. We have more elementary schools. If all of our elementary schools that we're feeding into a high school were lower in capacity, then obviously that would feed into that high school at some point. But we don't have any situation in which all of our elementary schools. So if we have an elementary school that's lower capacity, we also have 3 other elementary schools that are at or over capacity, if that makes any sense. So by the time they come up, because a high school will be comprised of students from 7, 8, maybe 10 feeder elementary schools at one point where those kids went. And then we also have to take into consideration average age that people are moving here, average age of kids coming in. A lot of students at younger ages will opt, and I say a lot, a portion of our students will opt to go to charter schools. And then by the time they hit high school, they want to play high school sports. They want to be part of high school programs. And so they enter into our high school. So we see that transition a lot. That answers.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Dr. Bub, thank you. It does. And yeah, that's the thing, because it's always a moving target. It doesn't necessarily have that correlation of over in the perfect world, if everything did, it would, but that you just can't look at it that way. Is that correct? So, okay, thank you.
Councilman Strader.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, everyone, Marcy and Mr. Gillen and Dr. Bub. Wanted to just say, first of all, I feel like your data has come a long way, and I just really appreciate that. I feel like this is a huge improvement from where we were 2 years ago in terms of really understanding where the district is at and the trends. So thanks for that. Couple of questions. I guess my first question is, about a year ago, you guys did a presentation where you had built your projection model, and that had led you to conclusions about your capital planning in terms of the number of elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools. Given the trends, do you still feel like those are the same in terms of your needs? So that's my first question. And then my second question is, do we specifically have a high school issue? It looked to me like the trends in the high school were a lot higher. Maybe it's the population moving, maybe it's, moving from charter schools, but just wanted to understand how you're going to address the challenges of overcrowding in high schools specifically. Thank you.
I'll start with answering both of those, and then Marcy can chime in. Yes, we did come and present. What I'll tell you is that those conversations are still ongoing on our needs as we continue to kind of evaluate the enrollment and kind of look at, if you remember the last time we spoke, we talked about the fact that, hey, this is a new projection process for us. And so now we're starting to get our first chances to really look at data and be able to say, is it working? And so we're identifying some places where the projections were right on, and that's great. And we're identifying some places where, that might need some more work. And so with that, I think comes then our continued analysis of what that means and what that short-term impact looks like and that medium-term impact. And I think you'll start to see us have more of those conversations as we kind of roll into then what are needs and then how we're going to evaluate those needs. And so that's really the first one. In the second question, I think what a lot of it has to do with as you look at high schools is we have a little bit more ability to manage enrollment and just how we maximize the facility. So for us, really next steps are doing that capacity analysis, both at the middle schools and the high school levels, so that we can further identify ways we can maximize our facility. So in this case where we maybe have what looks like an overcrowding issue, we're able to manage that through teachers traveling. And so that gives us a way to basically manufacture some additional capacity within the building. And so we'll be going through the steps now of trying to do that at the secondary level. It's just much more difficult at the secondary level. It's not as easy. The elementary kids kind of all stay in the same classroom. We know middle school and high school kids move. And so that, along with the CTE programs and the other shifting of students, kind of makes the calculation a little more complicated, but we're working through that process now so that we can identify, are there ways as enrollment increases or as it stays steady, that we're able to manage the enrollment as we look at whether we need additional facilities going forward.
And maybe just to piggyback on that a little bit, I think one of the things is Mountain View on your capacity numbers, but that's been its operational number for 15 years, as far as I'm aware. It's always been at that number, whether you put capacity or enrollment, that's how it's functioned. And right, wrong, or indifferent, it does stand out, but that's what at least my kids go there, that's what they've become accustomed to. And I think the administration and teachers are accustomed to a certain extent, right or wrong or indifferent, it is what it is in that regards. But sorry, Councilman Shader, just want to add that in since we're on the high schools. Didn't know if you had any other additional questions.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess, I understand that you're in the middle of a process. So you've updated your enrollment projections. When do you expect to have your needs identified in terms of that update, in terms of what additional schools are needed, or, your more medium and long-term, I guess, approaches?
Yeah, Councilwoman, this is Derek Bubb, Superintendent. I just wanted to touch base. We are consistently looking at this. We're working with our board. Obviously, we know what our needs are, and we know this is a storm that's starting to brew as far as we not only have capacity needs, but we also have refurbishment needs and how do we maintain the current facilities that we have. And we're consistently working with our board to keep them informed and come up with creative solutions to be able to obviously fund those needs and make sure that our kids continue to have great educational opportunities within West Ada.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Sounds like there's no specific timing at this point in terms of guidance of when we would expect that.
Yeah, I guess what I would say right now is I'm not prepared to speak for the board. That's really a board decision as far as how we go forward. What I will say is that we continue to have conversations with our board and make sure that they're apprised of what's going on. Obviously, there's some changes within the legislature. There's some funding that's going to come from there. And so we're anxiously awaiting to see how that all pans out here in this upcoming legislative session.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind.
Councilman Schrader.
Understood. And I think it's fantastic. I mean, listening to the governor talk about the investments in education that are planned. And obviously, we're all really hoping that, capital needs can become a part of that. And we're all on the same team, so we appreciate you looking at the data, appreciate you working with the board and everything. I guess just a simple question, and I think we asked you last time. I mean, do we need to do anything differently in terms of how we are growing or how we're working with you to help support you as you're looking at these trends? Or do you guys feel like, we're managing it? It's looking fine. Let's continue as we are.
Well, I would say this, I mean, and maybe we should have started out with this. We are very appreciative of the relationship we have with our city and with our council. We feel like you guys are all available to us, very supportive to education. I think we all hold education as a high priority in Meridian, and it's something that we can work as a team on. As we get closer on a bond or some type of funding mechanism, we will absolutely touch base. I know that we have talked about having a joint meeting here.
February 23rd.
February 20th, like I said, February 23rd. I don't look that far ahead of my calendar. So February 23rd, it sounds like we're gonna have a joint meeting, and we'll probably be able to have more in-depth conversations regarding what our direction is. And we'll obviously know more about the upcoming legislative session.
Fantastic.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
First, Marcy, I want to say thanks again for all your hard work. I feel like that you're an unsung hero in our community that not a lot of people know about. And I appreciate every week the good work that you put to give us the opportunity to make the best decision available. And I know we were talking earlier, this is our first time we've been able to be face to face. And I want to start with that. And I appreciate this presentation. The slides that you were going through with the schools that were showing the trends, to me, were really interesting. And I'm hoping one of the three of you can maybe speak to a little bit about what the methodology is in determining that trend, and what is a fluke for 1 year versus an ongoing. And then Superintendent Bupp, I will have a question for you here in a minute, but just trying to understand the methodology behind the trends would be really beneficial to me, Mark.
So there's several factors that go into projecting enrollment. One of them is the developments and the growth. So I gave a presentation about student generation rates, and even more specifically, what is that student generation rate for newer homes, so that we can identify if we have a newer home. And I think even one time Councilwoman Strader had said, like, let's compare newer, I think at the time we were discussing apartments, but let's compare those newer apartments with, and so that's something that I've really taken to heart and done. So applying those student generation rates to the developments and being able to identify what we can anticipate. And that's what you see in those letters, what we can anticipate as far as student counts from those new developments. So that's one factor, the growth factor. Another factor is taking away the growth and what is happening with our students not considering that growth. So our students leaving at a certain grade level, are they coming at a certain grade level, with which Dr. Bubb alluded to? Ninth grade, we see a jump, a spike. So we'll call that mobility. And it's different in every area. So we get to a not district wide, but more of a minute. I like to look at that at an elementary attendance area level and look at that residential based mobility to see what are the trends that are happening. Elementary, we add in another factor, which would be birth rates, to anticipate kindergarten and future years lower level. So all of those three factors can produce this projection, if you will. Now, again, these projections, what I'm learning as we continue to do this is feeling confident about and learning more about the projections and taking a look and say, did we project accurately? If not, what went wrong? What is different? Is the mobility accurate? In some areas, we look at the mobility and we say, we don't have a large sample area for this mobility because we have so many new homes. So we have to maybe do some adjustments, and that's a learning process that we're going through. So all of this, as we look forward, we can project into the future, but too far into the future, there's too much change. As we've noticed that even growth is slowing down a little bit. So we have to look far enough ahead, but not too far ahead, if that makes sense. So that's where those forecasting trends come from, looking at what those projections are with those three factors, and then even maybe an additional factor of just the institutional knowledge of what particularly goes on in a certain area. Because we do have some schools of choice options. We have, looking ahead, we had full-time kindergarten. Did that affect our numbers this year? We have a charter school coming in this area. How is that going to affect? So that fourth factor of just that institutional knowledge of what is happening. So all of those get combined, and we come up with this, or I come up with this projection, and look a couple of years in advance and come up with that trend. And I feel confident that while the numbers are not going to be 100% accurate, the trends are I believe are going to be accurate.
Mr. Mayor, maybe one more.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Superintendent Bub, because we're so lucky to have you here, I do have kind of an interesting question for you. There's a very small part of Meridian that is within the CUNA School District. And we had an annexation request that came in a few weeks ago, and representatives of the CUNA School District came with a letter saying that they didn't support this annexation unless the developer was willing to essentially write the district a check. It was a little bit of a head scratcher for me, and I'm just curious from a policy consideration process, is that something that West Ada is considering to emulate? Has there been any discussion from the board? Is that part of your SOP that you guys are exploring? And should we expect to see any of those types of requests from you guys in the future?
Great question. And no, we have not explored that. That's just not a policy that we have.
Okay.
I will just say, we believe for West Ada that that's not a road that we're ready to go down. We do not like the ground that that's going to be on. And we work hand in hand with our developers. Our developers have done a great job of donating land when we need it, or giving us land at a affordable cost to be able to build schools. And we work hand in hand with them, and we'll continue to do that. We'll provide really good feedback to the council on some of those zoning applications, but overall, we anticipate continuing to work hand in hand with our developers.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Councilwoman Pearl.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments and then a question. Sorry for my voice. I'm a little under the weather this evening. So if I understood correctly from Dr. Bub and Marcy, that the numbers jump headed into high school. I know as a realtor, I've had many clients that have decided to wait to move their families until their children are at that age. Also have had families that have moved locally from different areas, Caldwell, Nampa, Boise, into the district when their children hit high school because they want to take advantage of certain programs or certain athletic opportunities. So I assume that there's some of those elements as well, which of course are really hard to quantify. My question related specifically to the high schools is, has there been conversation with the board about moving boundaries? I know that it's been a hesitancy of the parent committees, but it seems to me like we've had this continual opening in Meridian High of about 300 students, and there hasn't been an adjustment to either the north or the south to accommodate some of the extra students in Mountain View or Rocky Mountain.
Well, let me start with, I think those are two, I'll cover both schools. So Rocky Mountain, we feel like our projections with the opening of Hawaii High School, our projections are actually that Rocky Mountain's going to reduce enrollment, continue to reduce enrollment. The way we opened up Hawaii High School, we expect that this year will be probably the largest Rocky Mountain is over the next couple of years. I think that was the last time I looked at those projections. As far as boundary changes, yes, we always consider boundary changes. I think it's really difficult to move kids from one school to another school. Socially, it's difficult. Obviously, we've gone through some challenging times with the pandemic and everything else. And so that is always an option that we look at. I think it's a difficult option, but it's something that is always a consideration as we move forward. And I agree with you. I do think that we do see a large mobility rate when it hits high school. People move into the area in high school from outside communities for a variety of different reasons, from outside the state for a variety of different reasons. We will continue to see our high schools with large numbers, I believe.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman Pearl.
just one follow-up question, Dr. Bub. So your team has done a great job of starting to identify the process by which they will decide to increase the space or use of classrooms or add a portable, all those things that we discussed this evening. And so it seems to me like you have a kind of a checklist now, an order of priority that you'll go through. Is there something like that exists for the boundary changes as well? Is there, do we wait until all of the facility capacity is met and then the boundary change conversation is had? Or how does that work in terms of priority of what you go through to accommodate additional students?
Yeah, great question. So we actually have a policy around boundary changes. So if we wanted to go down that road, we would have a parent committee. We'd bring in the community to be able to have input on those on boundary changes. It is one of the factors that we look at to mitigate any growth issues that we may have. So we can't just, as part of our policy, we can't just make boundary changes quickly. It takes a committee of individuals that look at all different options and look at the possibilities to be able to make decisions for kids. Now, that being said, I will say boundary changes are always an option for West Ada. They will always be an option for us to look at as we try to accommodate all of our students.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Overton.
either one of the two of you can answer this question, whoever's brave enough. I know boundary changes are not something that are looked upon fondly when they have to happen, and several times they've been proposed and rescinded. With these numbers climbing, are you still looking at, and it's elementary and secondary, keeping your classroom ratios of student to teacher the same?
Yes. Really direct. Yes, we are looking at keeping those classroom the student to teacher ratios the same. We don't want to overpack our classrooms. You're absolutely correct. Boundary changes are wildly unpopular for a variety of reasons, including the fact that people don't want their child who has established themselves as a sophomore at Mountain View High School to end up at a different school, regardless. And that's not one school versus another school. That's just really, you've established your social setting there. Boundary changes are always really difficult. We also are committed to maintaining the teacher to student ratio. We feel like that's a prime area for our students to be able to learn. It's important for our teachers to be able to give individualized attention to our students. And that becomes difficult. Again, the high school, working my entire career at high schools, the high schools, you are able to manage a little bit more. I spent time at Mountain View High School. I served 2 years at Mountain View High School, and you're able to manage that a little bit more by having teachers move classrooms throughout the day. There's just some different opportunities there. We also bus kids for CTE programs where they're not on campus. There's a lot of variables at a high school that you just don't see at when you're in an elementary school. So we feel like it's less of a we have more tolerance there. How's that?
Council, any additional questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Strader.
just a comment. One of our members of our planning staff, I believe in one of our meetings on a development, had made a comment about hearing through the grapevine that maybe we didn't find your letters as useful these days or something along those lines. And I just wanted to make sure we just directly dispel that myth. We read that letter every time we consider approving a new development. And it's incredibly important to us that I think you understand that, but I just want to make sure we're just really upfront about how important that letter is, and the projected students from new development in the area is very important to us. And just so you understand how important that feedback is, I know we all look at that. So just wanted to make sure there's not any misunderstanding about the usefulness of that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We do take the time to make sure that we're trying to inform the council as they make these decisions, and we appreciate that feedback.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Pearl.
Thank you. Just along those lines of what Councilwoman Strader was mentioning, and I appreciate her saying that because I completely agree. We have had some of our development community come to us and say, well, the schools in your priority growth areas are really full, and that's true. Our priority growth areas, Waihe's already full, and Mountain View is full, and those two areas are where our priority growth has gone. And so with Marcy's projections showing that those two schools will continue to have increased enrollment, it does make sense that that's the case. benefit, I think, to all parties is that you also have an understanding of our intention, where our growth is going to be, and hopefully that helps the district to make some of those decisions. And we certainly don't want to, we're basically telling the development community, hey, these are the areas we want you to expand. And then when we come back and say, yes, but then there's not enough enrollment, or excuse me, there's not enough school capacity in those areas, so we'd rather you not put a development there. We have a little bit of those conversations going on. I think as we continue to get more refined with what you're doing and what we're doing, it will start to really work itself out. So that's where I see some of this data becoming really important for our entire public, and not just for us as a city and how we plan. I think this is going to be important for all of our community, development community, our parents, and everybody. So just wondering if you all will publish these slides or something similar to it on a location on your website.
I don't know that we had plans to publish this. I think that this will be part of a bigger plan when we start talking about a long-term facilities plan. And it's not that it's secret. It's obviously part of an open meeting right now. It's just, I don't know that we have a spot on the website as I'm walking through that.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it. And we'll see you on the 23rd of February, if not before, in other ways.
Thank you.
Thank you. And for the record, Councilman Borton joined us at 4:44 p.m. Let the record note that, please.
So Marina Carson, community development here at the city doing comprehensive planning. It's nice to meet you, Councilman Overton. I wanted to piggyback while we were talking about schools and talk a little bit about our community programs and our safe routes to school, and how those safe routes to schools are identified, how we identify community programs. There was some questions that came up regarding just how we're keeping our kids safe and our community safe around schools. Those are sites that are used both, morning and afternoon as students come and go. Those are also sites that are often used after school for events, or even just used as community parks for people to go I know I've taken my toddlers to go run around a school playground before, so we want to make sure they're safe for all ages. So first I wanted to talk a little bit about the State Department of Education and what steps they've taken for reporting for those safe routes to school. So school districts are required to report any hazards, any areas that are hazardous for students within 1.5 miles that they're going to be busing students. Those are called safety busing. Anytime that a student within 1.5 miles of their school is bused, and the school district is required to come up with some kind of scoring element to look at the 1.5 mile buffer around a school and determine where it's not safe for a student to walk. So when a school district is going through that process, there are a few considerations. This isn't the full list, but a few of the considerations that they're looking at are the widths of the shoulder, the traffic counts, how old are the kids? Of course, we would expect a high school student to be able to navigate a situation a little bit differently than a kindergarten student who's walking with their parent. Are there trucks, farm equipment? We even look at, it's even suggested to look at temporary hazards. So there's been cases where there's construction and there might be temporary safety busing. So this is what the State Department of Education requires every 3 years. As far as how West Data handles this requirement, I'm not going to speak to that. I don't want to speak for them. But I did just want to let you know that requirement is in place. So how do we identify the hazards? So as a city, we do identify hazards. West Data does their process through that walk zone committee to identify hazards. ACHD has a process to identify hazards through their neighborhood pedestrian and bike plans. Here at the city, we're working with West Data to what kind of input are they getting from parents and school administrators? We also get residents. This year, we had a Girl Scout troop come and speak to the Transportation Commission about a concern that they had as a troop. So we get requests from community members. You all got a request and passed it to the Transportation Commission, and they vetted it and spoke to residents. So that is a vital part of the process to look at our transportation network, not just for cars, but for every mode of transportation, bike, feet, bus, maybe one day trains. We also do some site visits. So we get requests occasionally that there's an issue and I might go out and look at it, or transportation commissioners might go look at it prior to a meeting. So that's how we identify areas. The ACHD neighborhood pedestrian bike plan process is also extremely lengthy. They bring in stakeholders from multiple groups. They go out into the community with pop-up meetings, community meetings online. They go into schools in the past and ask the students themselves, where do you feel safe? What keeps you from feeling safe when you're walking to school? So these are how we identify those areas that we can make improvements, or those areas that currently have hazards. So I wanted to give a couple of examples. So I brought 2 schools to give examples. Excuse me. So first I want to orient you all a little bit to this. So the purple is the Mary McPherson attendance boundary. And then if you can see the kind of light orange is a 1.5 mile. This is just a point buffer, not a walkout buffer, but just to kind of give you an idea. And then a 1 mile buffer here. This small area is the actual walk zone for Mary McPherson. So based on the 1.5 miles that the State Department of Education says students can walk to school as long as there's no hazards, of that buffer, only this small section of students are actually walking to school. So then the next step is to say, why? Why can't the kids in this area get to school that's right here where this purple schoolhouse is? Why can't they get there safely? So as an example, I wanted to show you this green path, and I apologize, this cursor is not working here. This green path here, if there was a pathway installed there, and this is an example, but if there was a pathway installed there, this neighborhood could access that school through neighborhood walking routes, potentially. It would have to be evaluated, but that would greatly increase the walk zone area and the walkability to Mary McPherson. Similarly, if there were sidewalks installed at the corner of Amity and along Locust Grove, these students could walk to school. So we have a very small portion of students that can walk. I believe it's about 3 houses right now that can walk because there's a crossing at Merrimack. Other than that, the entire school is bused in. So the next example I wanted to give, so that's one example of how we would identify those are things we want to put on our community programs list. Maybe we want to put a pathway, or maybe we want to request some sidewalks through ACHD. So another example I want to give you is Chief Joe. So you'll notice there's not an attendance boundary on this one. Chief Joe is a school of choice, so there's a very large enrollment boundary there. But looking at the walk zone for Chief Joe, which is again this shaded area, the walk zone for Chief Joe is a decent size, especially compared to Merrimack. There is still, some areas that will likely never be in the walk zone. Kids are not going to be asked to cross a 5-lane road, especially not at the elementary level. I doubt they'll ever be asked to cross it at any other level. But there is an area here that maybe could be put into the walk zone. Right now, this neighborhood doesn't connect to this neighborhood. So these students, to get to the school, have to go out, walk down Fairview, up Locust Grove, and into the school. It's not a safe route to school, so it's not included in the walk zone. It's safety bused. One program or one project that is on our city programs list is a small pathway connection here that would connect to a micropath and a current pathway that really just need 500 feet across a canal to be connected so that students would have a safe route to school. when that's put in, it can be evaluated, is it now safe to walk? And then potentially that area that's circled there with the green dotted line could be added to the walk zone. So this is how we come up with the community programs list. We look at where are there sidewalk gaps? Where are there pathway gaps? Where could we install bike lanes that maybe there's bike lanes to the east and bike lanes to the west, but this 1 mile stretch is missing bike lanes. So where can we put those things in so that users from 5 to 95 can access the roads and the pathway system in our community through multiple modes of transportation? So with that, I want to talk a little bit about how, once we identify those projects, how do we prioritize those projects? So we've identified a list in past years, and we update that list every year and add to that list every year. The Transportation Commission is a vital component to updating that list. So the prioritization starts with ACHD sending planning staff a list of our past requests, whether they've been scoped, programmed, what comments ACHD may have on those from the previous year. And then we go through and look at if there's any new projects that have been identified over the past year. I keep a running list of projects that we identify through the different processes that I mentioned. I keep a running list throughout the year. And when we receive our list from ACHD from the previous year, I add those to it. And then the Transportation Commission has a prioritization subcommittee that then meets. And this year they had about a 3-hour meeting to really dive into every single project. And there's about 70 projects on the roads and intersections list and about 70 projects on the community programs list. And they really dive into the projects. We look at aerials, we look at what destinations we're talking about connecting, and go through the different considerations. So some people might look at enhanced crossings more favorably than a sidewalk gap project, but we have a robust team that goes through and looks at those and ranks those. After the prioritization subcommittee meets, and kind of same during that process, I'm also meeting with the Parks Department, saying which of these might connect to your parks. Where do you have new parks coming in that we might need projects? Because from us requesting a project to ACHD actually getting it built might be a 4, 5, 6 year process. So if we know a park is coming in the next 6 years, we might want to go ahead and start those requests. So I meet with Parks, I meet with West Data. Both of those stakeholders I meet with 1 to 2 times. And then the Transportation Commission takes in all the feedback from the subcommittee and my meeting with Parks and West Data, and they do a prioritization ranking and make a recommendation to council. So that's where we're at in the process right now. Last night, the Transportation Commission finalized their recommendation to council, and you'll see that in the next couple weeks, so that council can then look at that ranking and see if anything needs to be moved, ask any questions regarding those projects, and just work together to get those requests in and make the multimodal system a little bit better in the city. So I can stand for any questions on that.
Thank you, Miranda. Council, any questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Schrader.
have a ton. I really appreciate it. I've been really hyped up about this, so I really appreciate the information. So I guess a couple of things. So, we had this situation, I think it's being worked on, Pleasant View, I believe, so around Gondola and Black Cat. We had a safe crossing to school issue, and it's a case of maybe we're busing students, but there's human behavior. And if you live right across the street from a school, you may still have children that are crossing unsafely. And so I guess my first question is, how do we accelerate the process if we feel like there's something particularly hazardous? Or how do we, ensure that West Data and ACHD can work together to make sure we have adequate pedestrian plans in place for new schools? So that's kind of my first question.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Councilwoman Strader. So the gondola example is a perfect example. There have been other projects throughout the year. When the Transportation Commission gets a concern from council member, a citizen, a parent, any concern that they get, a business owner, they don't say, okay, let's add it to your list to look at the end of the year when we do our prioritization. They address that concern right then. And we have ACHD staff that sit as ex officios on that commission, and they begin the process right then with discussing that with ACHD staff in the meeting and then going forward with what tasks can be done. If it was something that we needed to coordinate with West Data, we would do that. We have West Data representation in the Transportation Commission. We have an ex officio position for West Data. So those things are addressed right then. When I spoke to keeping a tally of projects that came up throughout the year, sometimes the Transportation Commission's recommendation is something needs to be done now, let's get started on it, and we begin that process with ACHD. Sometimes the recommendation is that's a valid point. It's not really a pressing concern, or the development that's nearby hasn't finished building out yet. So it's not something that needs to be done right now. It's not like a fire issue. So let's put it on the list to look at when we do our prioritization.
Mr. Mayor, I have a couple more, if that's okay.
Councilman Schrader.
Thank you. So, with our, for example, our comprehensive plan, future land use map, we make sure that we comprehensively update that every 5 to 10 years, for example. It sounds like there's a running list of projects that the Transportation Commission is looking at. How often do they meet? How often do they review all of the school sites comprehensively?
So reviewing the school sites is something that West Data would do through their walk zone committee process, so their safety busing process. Transportation Commission gets the requests from West Data or from parents as they come in. And then also ACHD has a process that they go through. I think, so West Data does each school every 3 years is what the requirement is from the State Department of Education. I don't want to speak for them, but I believe they also do it more frequently as boundaries change or new hazards pop up. They would do that process again. 3 years is the minimum. What ACHD does, their neighborhood pedestrian and bike plans, I believe every 8 to 10 years. So they do it's a larger area that they're looking at for those plans. And then the Transportation Commission meets monthly and takes in requests. I would say we have probably a community request. If I had to guess, I would say we have 8 to 10 community requests a year that come in. So we are looking at things monthly at different areas.
Yeah, so I think one concern that I have, just being open about it, is you have 3 different entities that have a different process and a different cadence of reviewing this information. So there are these state requirements for safe routes to school and includes busing. Then you have a different neighborhood pedestrian plan that ACHD is doing. And then finally, you have citizens in Meridian that sometimes approach the Transportation Commission, but frankly, I don't even think that that's on their radar some of the time. It would be, I think, really beneficial to us to have a way in Meridian for us to comprehensively, either hire a consultant or go through on a regular basis all of our crossings to school, even if it's every 10 years or just some kind of regular review or process where citizens can be directed, here's who you provide feedback to. We have a plan in place. Every so often we comprehensively review, because there is a component to this that I don't see, which is, street lights, for example, things like that are a part of safety that I'm not seeing those being captured here. Maybe they are, but I'm just worried about, like I had a group of concerned moms that was upset about this particular crossing. The only reason I knew about it was Facebook. They didn't know where to go. They had talked to the school. they had been told by West Data one thing, they had been told by ACHD another thing. And then the city of Meridian was nowhere really in the mix of that. And now I'm really grateful to our staff for helping to coordinate. But, how do the three of us, the three agencies kind of work together to have a better plan? Because this is obviously a huge priority. We want kids and families to feel safe getting to school. Every time we have a, death of a student here in Meridian, I mean, it's a huge tragedy, and pedestrian deaths are avoidable. We need to really try our best, I think, to have a process. So I don't know, that's just some feedback. I might be the only person, but I doubt it, that's kind of concerned, just that there may be things falling through the cracks.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Martin.
Councilwoman Strader, that's a great point, and we could explore having a consultant. That's something that could be discussed at the staff level. I don't want to speak for my department. I will say that West Data's process of doing it at a minimum every 3 years, and likely more frequently as boundaries change and hazards change, is a process that the city is invited to sit on, and we do. Police are invited to sit on, and they do. So it is a process that West Data leads the effort, but it's a coordinated effort between the city, police. There's typically a regional director, I believe. I don't know if ACHD has been invited to those in the past. West Data would have to speak to that. And then, so granular, we're getting requests from citizens for specific areas. And then in smaller sections, West Data is evaluating, taking the charge to evaluate those with the city on the team. And then at a larger scale, ACHG is evaluating those every 10 years with West Data and the city on the team. So I wouldn't see it as 3 separate efforts. I see it as 3 separate agencies heading up the same efforts with different scales and different timelines. So really, I think we have a good overlap in those efforts.
With ultimately ACHD having the ability to determine what gets built on any given year throughout the entire county between West Data, Boise, CUNA. Did I miss any of the other school districts?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor. We have, we make our requests to ACHD, whether it's in the Transportation Commission meeting, as we're talking with staff, through requests that council has sent to ACHD administration in the past, or whether it's through this request process, we can make our requests, but short of going out and, doing it ourselves, ACHD has the authority. And I will say occasionally we do go through a process to go out and do it ourselves, so to speak. We have development improvements going on near Discovery Park that we felt were more pressing. So the city went into a development agreement with developer to get those done more rapidly. West Data, saw a need that was brought to them by citizens, and they moved to get the crossing in place before ACHD had the funds for that. One of the pathway connections that I mentioned earlier, we're going to look at what block grants we can use to make that small connection and increase the walk zone. So we make requests to ACHD, and they ultimately hold the dollars and the decisions on when those requests get funded.
Yeah, I guess I'm just a little concerned about, like, if I'm a parent and I call you, or somebody in the city, what is the official recommendation on, I don't feel I have a safe route to school for my child? What would I be directed to do?
So the first thing, Mr. Mayor, the first thing that you'd be directed to do is, have you spoken with the school district? If the school district has given, do you know what your walk zone is? Has it already been identified that you don't have a safe way to school, and maybe you just weren't aware of that? If you are in a walk zone and you don't feel it's safe, we can talk to the school district about maybe there needs to be an intermittent safety committee that's pooled for that school. If it's an area that's not in the walk zone, but we know students are using it because students and parents are going to do what they do, then that's something where we have the Transportation Commission look at it, and we frequently invite those people to either come and speak to the Transportation Commission. And then I also always tell them, whether you come and speak to the Transportation Commission or not, they are going to review the request. So the citizen doesn't have to come and speak. They can just call me and tell me they have a problem, and the Transportation Commission will consider it and go through the steps of, does it need to go to West Data to have them do something like the gondola project? Do we need to look to ACHD to say we need more speed limit signs, we need on-street parking, we need more crossings at this location? So that's the process that a citizen would go through when they get put through and they call the city hall and they get put through to my desk because they have a transportation safety concern.
Yeah, I mean, just feels like a big opportunity here to try to streamline that process for citizens and create a more coordinated effort between our three agencies, I guess would be my feedback. I worry that we're putting our Transportation Commission as kind of an intermediary that I'm unclear on, kind of how they're aggregating data and using it, and if it's effective, or if people would be, better served going directly to ACHD, et cetera. I don't know. It does feel like there are some that are kind of slipping through the cracks, would be my concern. If the three of us, the city, ACHD, and West Data, could have a process where we comprehensively review everything together on a regular basis. I know that's a huge ask considering everyone has a different process in place, but that might be an opportunity for us. Thanks.
Council, any additional questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Overton.
Miranda, excellent presentation.
Thank
I remember many years ago when the Traffic Commission was first brought together. And at that time, I believe we allowed citizens to come to the meetings and make their presentation on their concerns. And we tried to have representatives of all the organizations at the table at the same time. Tell me whether this has changed. We were always a little concerned that we were going to be approaching a solution to the problem that made the most noise, not necessarily the ones that should have been the highest priority. Is there anything in place with the commission currently to kind of sift through what the complaints are with advice or statistics or studies to determine what those highest priorities should be, instead of maybe getting caught up in just the one that makes the most noise at the meeting?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Overton, that's a great question. So when a request comes forward and we have the noise for the request, that's the process where we look at and we do say, is this a request that needs to be handled right now? Is this a request that's got an immediate impact on our business community or our residents walking, students trying to get to school? Or is it something that can be put on the prioritization subcommittee to make sure that we're not elevating requests because it's the squeaky wheel, and we're actually elevating the requests that have an immediate safety need? And if it's not a request that has an immediate safety need or an immediate impact on our business community or our students, then the Transportation Commission will say, let's recommend that be put to the prioritization subcommittee and be ranked with the other projects that come through. So that list of 70 projects, that's when it would get, if it's not an immediate need, if the Transportation Commission doesn't deem it an immediate need, then it will go on that list. If they do determine it's an immediate need, and ACHD and West Data sit on that commission as ex officio members, and so if that group determines it is an immediate need, we work directly with ACHD, with the school district. If we're not getting traction that we need, then we'll come back to council and ask for some support, because you all guys have a much bigger hammer than the Transportation Commission. So we do go through the process. If it's not, we don't act based on squeaky wheel. We act based on what the Transportation Commission acts, based on what the safety concerns are and the impact to our community.
Sure.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Just a couple of short questions. you touched on your presentation, a lot of the great work that West Data is doing. You know, as we continue to see new charter schools show up in Meridian, many of which provide busing, and at least in our neighborhood, I see 3 buses that come by, 2 for 2 different charter schools and then a West Data bus. So what role and responsibility do these charter schools have in also participating in this process? You know, does the burden just fall all on West Data and our Transportation Commission? Are they active partners as well? And do they have a responsibility to participate as well?
So when a charter school, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Cavanagh, when a charter school comes in with an application for development, they have to go through the traffic process that every development goes through with ACHD to make sure that the infrastructure is there for their needs, which would include students walking. So whether there's adequate sidewalks for students, whether the roads need to be widened because the traffic is going to change with a school. So they go through that process at that point. I think maybe there's an opportunity that when we go through the prioritization process, we reach out to charter schools as well in the future. I don't know that that's something that we've done. We do have charter schools that we've had parents come from charter schools and say that there's an issue. And we've addressed that with our traffic sergeant that sits on the commission as an ex officio as well. So we've addressed that with police through the traffic, and then we've also addressed it with ACHD and the charter school specifically.
Mr. Mayor, maybe
Councilman Cavanagh.
dovetailing on that, you know, it's one thing about how a student can walk to school, but I mean, really the larger picture is we want our students to be able to get to and from school safely, whether they're walking to a bus stop or walking home after they get off the bus. And so certainly for students who live near a school, you know, and Chief Joseph is a great example. That school was built in an existing neighborhood. So of course, it's much easier. I was a Chief Joseph kid, go Appaloosas, and I would walk to school and go home at lunch. Where Mary Mac, right, was out in the middle of nowhere. And so certainly there's less opportunity to walk, but it's also about how those students, when they get on a bus and get dropped off at a bus stop, that they're able to also get home safe. So how do we intertwine both of those things? Because I think the students that are walking to school is a small subsection of our overall student body in West Data and these other schools. So how far out do we go to look to ensure that when they get on and off a bus, that they're also getting home safely?
Mr. Mayor.
Brandon, you got to phone a friend behind you, just so you know.
So real quick, I want to speak to, you're correct. Students getting, walking is a small population of the students. Students in general is a small population of the city. So really, when we get into the ACHD neighborhood and pedestrian bike plans, that's looking at how do our residents get to connections? How do they get to the grocery store? How do they get to the library when they're at home, not trying to get to school? How do they get to the YMCA? So that process, the ACHD neighborhood and pedestrian bike plan process, brings in lots of stakeholders, and that's looking at the larger network, not just getting to and from school, but getting through your community on foot and on bike.
Dr. Bub, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I just want to, Mr. Mayor, Council, I just want to speak on behalf of West Data, if I can have 2 minutes of privilege here. Just for a second, I want to talk about our process when it comes to busing. If there is a busing safety concern, through our website, you can put a work order ticket in, and we will look at every single one of those work order tickets and respond to every single one of those work order tickets. Now, to put a hawk light in is obviously, it takes time, and getting that approved through ACHD. We are paying for the hawk light off of Gondola. We're taking on that burden. When we asked about how do you prioritize? Is it the noisiest? No, it's not always the noisiest. Sometimes it is, we're sending a bus over for safety for a total of 15 kids. Does it make sense to have a bus over there? Maybe it makes more sense strategically to have a hawk light there where kids can walk across the street. And now we have freed up the bus, which we all know that busing in general is freeing up those routes is a huge concern for all of us. So that's kind of our process. We look at every single one of those at the beginning of every school year. We also drive every single route, because as you know, if we looked at things every 3 years, within 3 years, there's a high likelihood that there is going to be construction on one of these roads, and probably not a safe area to put buses. or to have a bus stop. So we look at them consistently. Now, we have a routine meeting every 3 years, but that doesn't mean we can't move, we can't change bus stops. We're very agile with changing bus stops. We communicate with our parents. And that could even be, hey, State Street's going to be torn up this next year. We know that. So we're going to move those bus stops within a month of that. We know that there's some bus areas out where the 16's going in, out by Hawaii High School that we need to make adjustments to. So we make those consistent adjustments, not every 3 years. Every 3 years is when we formally meet with a committee of people, bring all stakeholders in. But safety is our ultimate concern. We have a process for that. Parents can put in a concern with that. We will look at those concerns and we'll try to address them. And one of the examples of addressing that is through the Hawk Light. It just takes time to be able to get that. And we'll even fund that if needed. And we're funding that Hawk Light at Gondola.
Mr. Mayor, maybe one more question for either of you.
Councilman Governor.
Both here. What type of funding does the state provide, you know, in terms of grants or programs? Does anything like that exist? I seem to remember from my lobbying days that there was somebody that was always down advocating for more funding for safe routes for schools. And so I didn't know if that's a grant program or if West Data is so big that you don't get a share of that pie and maybe it goes other places.
Mayors and council. Really, it's the safety busing process. We've provided reimbursement through the transportation process for that. And that's really our only avenue in the case of the Hawk signal that we'll be installing. We're actually using a capital funds to be able to do that. So it's coming from the district.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Schrader.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for looking at having that Hawk signal installed. That's a really important project to parents in that area. And I appreciate you guys, you know, accelerating that and making it happen because it sounds like it was a very unsafe situation. So thanks for doing that.
Agreed and echo those sentiments. Council, any additional questions for Miranda?
Mayor.
Lieutenant Harper.
Mayor, members of council, just to update on Gondola, we had a conversation not too long ago with a development going in that area and concerns about traffic speeds. And I just wanted to give you guys a quick update on the record that our traffic team went out there and in one day wrote 50 tickets during school hours. And I won't add on the record who majority of those folks were that were receiving the tickets, but we know the importance of safety of our youth, especially going to school in the morning or after school. And fortunately, we're able to be here on Tuesday nights and receive that information and take enforcement action when necessary to try to improve those areas where we have safety concerns.
Thank you for sharing that. All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, the West Data team, for being here and staying for the entire conversation as well. And we look forward to seeing you again real soon. So thank you. With that, we're going to go back to item 7, which is a proclamation for Mental Wellness, Suicide Awareness, and Addiction Recovery Month. So if I could get September and Angela to join me at the podium, do that. And thank you for your sitting through that presentation. So council and those, some of you may recognize September. I got to get those words out from our Meridian Stars earlier this year. But I'll go and do a proclamation and then I'll turn the mic over to both of you for any comments you'd like to make on behalf of the work that you're doing on this topic. Whereas people with mental illness, addiction struggles, or thoughts of suicide can recover if given the necessary services and support in their communities. And whereas research shows that promoting connectedness between people and within communities creates a sense of belonging, which can be a proactive factor against suicide and addiction. And whereas people with these struggles make important contributions to our families and our communities, they have many life experiences to offer so that others can find success and recovery. And whereas greater public awareness about mental illness can change negative attitudes and behaviors. And whereas we believe that connection is the cure and know that encouraging those connections takes work and partnership in the community. And whereas working with our community partners to introduce and connect people with the mental health, addiction recovery, and suicide prevention resources that are available throughout the Treasure Valley is critical to the well-being of our families, communities, schools, and businesses. Therefore, I, Mayor Robert E. Simpson, hereby proclaim January 2022 as January 2023 as Mental Wellness, Suicide Awareness, and Addiction Recovery Month in the city of Meridian, and encourage the residents of our community to commit to increasing awareness and understanding of mental illness, reducing stigma and discrimination, and promoting appropriate and accessible services for all people with mental illnesses. This 10th day of February, January 2023. So thank you for being here and for bringing more awareness to this issue.
I'd just like to say a quick note and just really my appreciation to the city for their conscientiousness and their support of this initiative, and for the support in Connection is the Cure in our agenda for this year, really to bring some great programs to the community and the Treasure Valley at large. And so thank you so much, the city and the council members today.
I just want to echo what Angela said. And I think when we started down this path about 18 months ago, I really felt like it was my opinion that this was important. And as we've moved forward, it's gone from opinion to fact. This is really important in our community as we're getting out there and talking to people and hearing people's stories and their experiences. So we're so thankful for the support and the backing of the city, and we look forward to really great partnerships and being able to help more people. So thank you.
Mayor, if I can add a couple of comments. I just want to introduce Sam Lukey and Mike Panther. They're part of our CIT team. Yeah, Sam is our clinician. And I just wanted them here to be part of this proclamation. I think it's important to show our support and the work we're doing in the city, not only through mental health, but also with substance abuse through MADC. So again, I'm glad we could be here to support you guys tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant of the Department. We appreciate it very much. And yeah, it is a partnership all the way around through the community. So very much appreciated. All right, Counselor, are we good to keep going, or do we need to take a break? I just want to make sure we're a little bit off our normal schedule with what people normally do. All right, then with that, Vincent, we'll do item 9, which is the Mayor's Office Strategic Plan Update, and I will turn this over to Mr. Kuntz.
Right, I'm excited to be up here. I haven't been up here in a while. Good afternoon. I guess it's good evening now. So, Mr. Mayor, members of council, I am here to provide the biannual execution update for our city's 2021 to 2025 strategic plan. Councilman Overton, I'm glad to have you here and look forward to working with you and collaborating with you in the future on different projects. So I'm the strategic performance analyst for the city. My main job duties are administering, managing, and creating the strategic plan with help of all the staff. I'm also in charge of our continuous improvement program. But tonight I'm going to talk about our strategic plan. So the strategic plan was formulated with our vision of kind of where we want to be, our mission of what we want to, how we want to do it, and then our focus areas about what we care about, and then the goals. And those are kind of the key things, like what do we want to achieve? How can we achieve it? Those are kind of the key framework pieces of our strategic plan. Councilman Overton, I know you're new to the council, but I know you've been with the city in various capacities for a long time, but if you have any specific questions as we're going through the presentation, I'm happy to answer them for you. And on the agenda tonight, so we're going to talk about kind of a recap of what's occurred from June of 2022 to December of 2022. We're going to go through by focus areas of some of the highlighted work that's related to some of the achievement of the goals in the plan. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the ongoing execution, and then any questions you might have on those topics. So just a general update. Again, this provides about a year and a half of total execution in the plan. I'm happy to report several key stats in the plan. We've completed 59 of the 359 tactics, which represent about 18% of the total plan's tactics. We have work currently in progress on 85% of the tactics in the plan. Our departments have engaged you as a body on several key initiatives over the past 6 months. You've heard from them on transportation and roadway improvements, parks and transportation, parks and public works master planning efforts, the civic block, and housing attainability. And these don't represent everything that's associated with the plan, but these were some of the key areas that departments engaged with you as a body on related to the plan. So I'm going to go through by focus area and talk a little bit about some of the things, some of the key highlights we've achieved during this last 6-month period. First one is responsible growth. That has to do with our long-term comprehensive planning efforts, prioritizing infill development and encouraging diverse housing options. Related to that, and growing to our comprehensive plan, planning has surveyed you over the past and on what you'd like to have provided for them from data on entitlement decisions through their staff report program. They also look to improve that report and by getting input from you on what they provide to planning and zoning and provide you the most relevant information for the staff reports in early 2023. Both the Parks Master Plan and Utility Cost of Service Study have been shared with Council. Parks looks to bring the Parks Commission and to City Council the final draft of their Parks Master Plan over the next few months. And then the fee adjustments as part of the Cost of Service Study were approved in November, and additional recommendations are currently being reviewed by Public Works and will be brought to Council accordingly. And I know you heard a lot about housing attainability and affordability over the past year. You approved updates to the UDC, including live work, accessory dwelling units, and parking standards for vertically integrated projects. That's a mouthful. Discussions will continue with Council and stakeholder groups to identify recommended changes to code, policy, or innovative ideas over the next year. Related to transportation and infrastructure, related to the goal of improving roadways and efficient travel, Linda Road has continued to progress with ACHD's leadership having a favorable reaction to constructing the overpass without full road build out. And Keller, the project manager, is currently at about 30% design completion. Keller is going to be working with homeowners to look to secure right-of-way acquisitions in early 2023. Related to some of the pathway connectivity, Creason Pathway paving is complete along 5 Mile Creek, and then the Linder and Cayuse Creek and Linder Pathway segments are ready for construction when weather allows in the spring. And our Transportation Commission, as Miranda was alluding to, is also evaluating some of the community projects in their integrated 5-year work plan. Related to some of the safety and accessibility services, we've also engaged our partners on Eagle Road in their corridor review study and safer study to reduce accidents and improve safety and speed along State Highway 55. We're also, as Miranda alluded to, so I'm not going to talk a lot about it, but the partnership with Black Cat and Gondola Crossing that we're working on there. So she talked a lot more about that, so I'm not going to cover that.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman Schrader.
is it, Vincent, is it okay if we just ask questions as we're going through each one? I know you sent us this already. I think most of us, had a chance to review the PowerPoint previously, but I did have kind of a comment about the transportation one. Or do you want us to wait till the end?
Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman Schrader, I can answer him now. I'm happy to answer him now or at the end, whichever you prefer.
Okay. Well, if you don't mind, if you can go back one slide on the school zone and safety crossings. Right, just an idea for us, and I know we update our strategic plan, kind of on a regular basis, but as we make progress, maybe we want to add to it. One thing that occurs to me with the pedestrian safety is, I think we're hearing a lot about individual efforts that we're making, and then we're hearing about the process that each of the agencies we partner with does. But I'd like us to maybe ask a different question, which is something along the lines of, what would we need to do to have some of the best pedestrian safety outcomes possible for our city? Like really come at it from the other side of what are the best practices? If we need to engage a consultant, that's possible, but similar to how AARP has their standard for communities, there are, Vision Zero communities. There are a lot of different organizations that are focused on helping communities reduce pedestrian fatalities and have better multimodal transportation. I'm just wondering if, it's just a comment, if as we're doing our tactics and checking them off, I'd hate to have us say, hey, we're completing 85% of our tactics, but we're not like kind of going ahead and pushing forward on things that we can do beyond the tactics that were originally set. So that's just kind of a comment, but we've had a couple of really sad fatalities happen here in the city that have been just really tragic. And I'd hate for us to wait until 2025, to expand our focus on the multimodal safety and the pedestrian safety. So, just a comment on that one.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman Schrader, I think that's the one thing that's been, good about our plan is we plan to make it nimble. And so, as the tactics do get completed, one thing I've had conversations with about the directors and with the SMEs working on the projects has been, what's next? When we do complete something, what is next? What's coming up? What's around the corner? So it isn't just a tactic is completed and then we're done. The work's definitely never done. And that speaks to the strategies and the goals above it. The goals aren't completed just because one of the pieces of the tactic is done. So I appreciate that comment, but yeah, that is something that's being discussed behind the scenes with the departments. And that's one of the reasons they come to council to, give you those discussion topics and take the input. So I appreciate the comment though.
Thanks.
And related to business and economic vitality, this focus area includes work related to our downtown, targeting industries, business engagement, and family wage job creation. Related to the goal of business and economic and downtown development, we have kind of several key projects. The city's actively participating with the Chamber's Workforce Development Council, where we hope to provide and develop hiring and retention tools for existing businesses. Related to downtown development, MDC Public Works are partnering with FEMA to work on the 9-mile floodplain improvements in downtown, and they've applied for a grant that would assist for that project. We anticipate a spring 2023 decision with FEMA. The city would currently be responsible for about $421,000, which MDC would help reimburse the cost. MDC's also secured a consultant for the future for our downtown with the next destination downtown plan, which will help create the future of our redevelopment and community character in our urban core. Moving on to public health and safety. This one's about investing in our community infrastructure, creating clean and compliant utilities, and evaluating the impact of our environmental decisions. Under the goal of improving outcomes of response and community risk reduction, the fire department has several key initiatives. Fires work towards their CSPE accreditation by sending a team for quality improvement to Colorado in October. Fire is also working closely with Ada County Dispatch for ways to deploy resources sooner when they receive calls for service and when they're also leaving the station, which is critical to reducing response times. The department's also looking at co-locating paramedic services and technology solutions with our partners to secure and improve response times. Related to our goal of deploying resources and utilizing partnerships to build community trust, PD is actively recruiting 6 SROs in our elementary schools to ensure safety and service in those facilities. They will also work closely to develop relationships with the staff and parents and students. PD has also been working with our partners on Eagle Road to reduce traffic accidents and improve safety through patrol saturations. Those started back in November. And more recently, the city has created easy blood donation sites at City Hall to increase blood supply to the Red Cross. The Northwest Precinct has broken ground and is estimated to be complete by November of 2023. That project's on track and on budget. And then fire is also actively recruiting for their 30 personnel that will staff both fire stations 7 and 8. And if anybody has questions while I'm going through these, feel free to ask.
Mayor,
Senator Harper.
this is 3 times in one night. I just wanted to add, in regards to our SRO program, all 6 of our elementary SROs are actually fully functioning now in our schools. The last 2 came on as of Monday, so they're settling into their new roles. And in regards to the Eagle Road speed patrols, I was updated the other day. In regards to that, we've been bringing on several additional officers throughout shifts during our peak hours, working on our ongoing traffic challenges.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lieutenant Harper. Related to vibrant, sustainable community, and including the goal of improving offerings and livability for our community, the AARP Livability Initiative, the age-friendly survey was recently completed. We got about 524 responses, and then insights from that survey will be included in listening sessions and focus groups later this winter. Under the goal of providing premier services, Discovery Park Phase 2 is well underway with significant construction that occurred in this past summer and fall. The infrastructure for the 520 parking stalls, as well as the collector road, is in place and moving forward. The skate and bike park segments are currently in design and should start in the spring of 2023. And the park is moving along nicely to make that premier amenity in South Meridian. Related to goal of pursuing environmentally conscious projects, the RFPs for biogas and biosolid programs using council-approved ARPA funding are also in progress with Public Works, and look for more information on those in the near future.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman Schrader.
just on the last one, Vincent, it would be great if we could just get an update on our street lights. You know, council had approved, actually now it's been quite a while, you know, some LED light conversions, and I understand there's a good reason for the delay, really labor challenges, but it'd be great, you know, considering the return on investment, if we could get an update from Public Works or through you on kind of when we would see that rolled out and underway.
Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman Schrader, I do know that they've been working on, there's been some delays obviously, but I know they've been working on the master streetlight master plan and some of those projects. But I can't speak to exactly when I could get that, but I can definitely work with Public Works to get you more information on that. I know Warren's been working on it and their team, so happy to get that information. And last but not least, government excellence. So relating to innovating operations, the Innovation and Change Academy, we've been working on an internal tool called the Innovation Portal. Basically, it houses all of the information for all of our process improvements in the city. Been working on idea generation and completed process improvements. We've been working on, during 2023, we're going to be rolling out reporting projects to council and also to the potentially the community on what wastes have been identified and what projects were being worked on. During FY 2022, we worked on 12 process improvements in various stages. And we completed 4 projects during that time as well. But we're continuing to move forward. We've trained about 80 staff members at this point on process improvement techniques, and it's starting to take hold in the city. So more to come on those. Related to career advancement, the compensation committee recently completed its initial market study to determine the competitiveness of employee wages. This study allowed us to take the initial step of getting all employees below the 50th percentile up to that level, which was an important step in getting our workforce to the right level as we move forward. And there's going to be a lot more work on that in the near future, but that was that first initial step that we took. So related to transparency and approachable government, the Meridian podcast completed their first run with over 700 downloads. I think it's getting close to 900 downloads now. We heard from all of our departments, the mayor, city council about our strategic plan, and we're looking to expand that into our partners in the spring of 2023, which is, I think, a really good step forward in transparency and getting those connections made with the community. And over a year of blood, sweat, and tears, and huge contributions from our IT department and communications and departmental subject matter experts, we finally launched our website, and it was no small feat. This is the primary source of information for almost all of our demographic groups in the city. So we wanted to make sure it was the most premier experience possible. And I think we've taken a giant leap forward from where we were with that website. So kudos out to the teams that worked on that. So, and with that, let's see, I've got one more thing, ongoing plan execution. The mayor has been committed through his blog posts to the community on our focus areas, and we started with public health and safety and government excellence, and we'll be highlighting more of the work to our community that we're doing as we move throughout the year. We're also going to be taking a more in-depth look at our citizen survey, looking for opportunities in some of those key areas that were identified in traffic enforcement, planning and zoning services, and growth and transportation concerns. Our departments, just like tonight, with Miranda and with West Ada, will continue to engage with you as on council on several key topics related to the initiatives that they're working on with the strategic plan. So look for more to that, and I will be available at any time to answer any questions or provide any additional data to you at any time. So happy to do so. And with that, stand for questions.
Thank you, Vincent. Council, additional questions, comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
it's just one question. I'm always curious. You sent this in December. I think you had 56 tactics complete. I noticed on your updated slide, 57.
Yeah.
So what's the new one that you were able to complete from early December to today?
I wish I knew the answer to that question.
Maybe that's what it
Yeah,
is.
that was the checkbox. So.
Just Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Cavanagh.
And Vincent, my feelings about engaging community partners as kind of the next step. I'm really excited to hear that's the direction you're going. I think that's appropriate, and I'm really excited.
Councilman Pearl.
Thank you. Good to see you, Vincent, the little small part of the screen that I can see you on. You had mentioned that we are about 18% completed, and we're about halfway through. We're in 2023 on this 5-year strategic plan. Some of these are ongoing efforts that don't really hit completion per se. I don't know what percentage of the strategic plan are ongoing efforts and which ones, how many of them are items that would be completed. But are you expecting towards the end of the plan to see a whole bunch of them completed at the end? Or it seems to me like we should be a little bit farther along on our percentage, but maybe there's several of them that don't ultimately get complete because they're just ongoing efforts. Can you speak to that?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Perot, Yes, some of the tactics in the plan were designed to be new items that were going to be completed, and they would probably be the check the box. But when we created the plan initially, that was part of the flexibility of the plan. Was we acknowledge that this plan may not have as many check the box moments. It may be, hey, this is a long-term strategy that's going to take 5 years, and it may have a bunch of zigs and zags over time. But yes, there are some items, in public works and in planning that are more ongoing efforts. And they're, hey, we work on this for a year and then we make an adjustment. And there are some in those same departments that are very strategic that say, hey, we want to create this program and execute this process and we're done. And then to Liz's point, we might go back in and say, hey, we need to make an adjustment and change or add some tactics, add a strategy. So this is really more of a living, breathing strategic plan than a, hey, we're checking all the boxes off and we're going to be, I couldn't tell you we're going to be at 85%, when we're done with this plan. We may not be, but I think it's more of, have we moved towards achieving the goals? Have we moved towards the adopted plan goals? And have we achieved those items? So there may be less of that. I mean, I never established a specific amount that I would say like, hey, we're going to be done and we're going to be at 70%, 80%. But that wasn't the goal in this plan. It was to make sure that it was achievable, flexible, and nimble. So if that answers your question.
Yeah, I guess I'm not understanding, why sort of present the number 56 and the percentage if that's not really, we're not trying to get to a certain, we're not trying to get to a certain amount completed by 2025. Is there a better way we can kind of assess our progress?
Mr. Mayor,
Not
Council.
assess it, but a better way that that council can understand our progress through the statistics.
That's a good question, Councilwoman Strader. I think basically, having these discussions on what have we achieved, are we meeting the goal? I think the over checking the box would probably be the best way to do so. I don't want to say that we shouldn't have that measure, but I also think if we're going to be flexible and we say we didn't achieve these tactics, but we need to totally change the direction we're going and achieve something different because circumstances changed, and we didn't check that box, but we went in the direction our community wanted us to go in, or our policymakers wanted us to go in, and maybe we only achieved 50% of the plan, but the bulk of the things we achieved were what our community wanted.
Council, any additional questions or comments for Vincent? Yeah, well, thank you, Vincent. Appreciate you and really all the employees who are continuing to work. I know I think that they really enjoy getting the reminders from you on updating the plan. So we can also keep track because there's a lot of moving pieces going on that, it takes a team. It's not a one person ability to track all this. It's people in each department updating the information, providing it, and it's often a moving target in a lot of ways. But thank you and appreciate it. And so tell the girls hello, and that's why dinner's late tonight.
I think they're dancing right now, so they're probably waiting for me to go grab dinner with them somewhere. So
okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So next time on the agenda, but I think we can continue moving forward because these don't know how long they'll take, but hopefully not too long. But next item is item 10, City Council election of new City Council officers and department liaison appointments.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
not sure the process on this, if it's appropriate for me to make maybe nomination for both president and vice president, or if we need to do that separately. I've seen a shrug from our city attorney, which
I think this is whatever you all do, and if the
All
rest of you
right, then.
agree, then we're good.
all right, well then, with that, maybe, Mr. Mayor, I'll just break them out as to two separate motions. I would nominate Brad Hoagland to continue for another year as the city council president.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? If there's no discussion,
Unanimous.
do I call the question? I'll call the question then. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to. Do I have another motion or discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
I appreciate the work that Joe has done filling in for me when I'm not been able to make some meetings and whatnot. As vice president, he's done an excellent job, and I appreciate that help in the lift of the load at times. So I would nominate Councilman Joe Borton as vice president for this coming year.
Second.
I have a motion and a second regarding the nomination of Joe Borton for vice president. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
real briefly, I'm excited to be supportive of both our president and our vice president. Maybe some comments or thoughts is, we're going to be functioning as a city much differently this year than we were last year. We functioned much differently last year than we did in the years past as a result of COVID. And I just would invite both our council president and vice president to maybe be a little more proactive in working with the council on ways that we can engage our community this year. I think that's something that many members of this council have expressed some desire for, and we want to work with our leadership team and mayor's office to make that happen. And I guess that would be my request of this leadership team over the next few months, is that we build out that process so that we can be a stronger council as we go into 23 and beyond.
Are there any further comments? Then I'll call the question. All those in favor, signify by all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the vice president position has been filled. Congratulations to both the president and vice president on your successful unopposed nominations and unanimous consent decisions. So then with that, does the council president have anything to say about the department liaison appointments?
Mr. Mayor, before you have resolution 2365, and this is following the process that we initiated last year to try and streamline some things. We had lots of council members appointed to a lot of different things, and it really wasn't realistic to cover everything. So working with the mayor, we got the involvement of the department heads and others in the city to be backups and to other things, and we reassessed all the positions that we were involved with, and then some we outright chose not to become involved with because of bandwidth, but also because of what was the investment? Was it worth the time and effort for the investment in some of these things? So this follows that same pattern of what we did last year, with a few movement based on the liaison assignments that will be in the next one. This particular one is with the interagency boards, committees, and outside groups that we interact with. So, and then the next one will be for the council members to serve as department liaison. So that's all I have, and open to any questions.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Yes, maybe a question for Council Member Hoagland, and I appreciate, I think this last year, trying to free up some of the time and bandwidth that many of the council was experiencing, particularly those of us with full-time jobs, and can often be a challenge to juggle all that. And I know that we've had, in many cases, staff step into those roles. Should a council member take an interest in one of these outside groups that are currently being staffed or managed by a member of staff and would want to move into that role, what would the process for that to occur? Is the request go through you, council president, through the mayor's office? Because it's already built into the resolution, does it require a council action? I want to make sure that we're clear on kind of the steps, and if this is how it's going to be for the next year, or if there's an opportunity, if a council member has an interest, that they can move back into that role.
Mr. Mayor.
That's wrong.
Councilman, it's a process because there's a resolution, we're adopting this, that is to say, though, we can always add somebody to that. If we want to change that in any way, shape or form, we certainly can do that. You know, if there's a particular place that you want to serve in any capacity, we can take that up and just amend that and move forward at a future council meeting. No, nothing too difficult about that. So yeah, if there's something that comes up during the year and you go, oh man, I really want to get involved in that and represent our community there, certainly by all means, let me know and we can work. I'll let the mayor know and we can make that happen.
Thank you. That's that was the answer I was looking for, Mr. Mayor and Council President.
All right. Anything further? And if not, we'll move on to item number 11, which is resolution 23-2365. Ask the clerk to read this resolution by title.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a resolution, the mayor and city council of the city of Meridian approving city council president's appointments of city council members, city staff members to serve as interagency boards, committees, and initiatives representatives and providing an effective date.
Councilor Fred, I guess we don't need 3 readings. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
I move approval of resolution 23-2365.
Second.
Have a motion, a second, to approve resolution 23-2365. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the resolution is agreed to. Next item 12, is resolution number 23-2366. Ask the clerk to read this resolution by title.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a resolution, the mayor and city council of the city of Meridian approving city council president's appointments of city council members to serve as department liaisons and providing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
I move approval of resolution number 23-2366.
Second.
Have a motion, a second, to approve resolution 23-2366. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the resolution is agreed to. Okay. Our final item on the agenda is item 13, which is ordinance number 23-2008. We will ask the clerk to read this ordinance by title.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's an ordinance annexing the northeast 1/4 of the southwest 1/4 of section 24, township 3 north, range 1 west, Boise Meridian, Ada County, Idaho. More particularly described in Exhibit A, rezoning 5.04 acres of such real property from RUT to R8 zoning district, directing city staff to alter all applicable use and area maps, as well as the official zoning maps and all official maps depicting the boundaries and zoning districts of the city of Meridian in accordance with this ordinance, providing that copies of this ordinance shall be filed with the Ada County Assessor, the Ada County Treasurer, the Ada County Recorder, and the Idaho State Tax Commission as required by law, repealing conflicting ordinances and providing an effective date.
Thank you. Council, you've heard this ordinance read by title. Is there anybody that would like it read in its entirety? If not, do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman Pearl.
I move that we approve ordinance number 23-2008.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, to approve ordinance number 23-2008. Is there any discussion? If not, clerk, call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Strader,
Aye.
Overton, Perot,
Aye.
Cavanagh.
Aye.
Borton,
Thumbs up, aye.
Hoagland.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carries, and the ordinance is approved.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
I move we adjourn.
Motion adjourned. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Those nay, the ayes have it. We are adjourned.